Everyone feared the billionaire fiancé, but the arrival of the new maid changed everything. Ken, the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, had been away from his mansion for almost a month on a business trip. In his absence, his fiancée, Tonia, was the one controlling his house and even helping with some parts of his company. Everyone feared Tonia. Her presence alone made the workers uncomfortable. At home and at the office, no one relaxed when she was around. Tonia was rude, wicked, and fierce. She never forgave mistakes. She did not believe in second chances. If anyone annoyed her even a little, she would sack the person without thinking twice. One evening, Ken's maid, Maria, made a small mistake in the kitchen. Tonia had asked her to prepare jollof rice and chicken for dinner. But Maria, trying to surprise her with something different, cooked fried rice instead. When Maria served the food at the dining table, Tonia stood up immediately. Her eyes were full of anger. She shouted at Maria for cooking fried rice instead of jollof. Before Maria could even explain herself, Tonia grabbed the hot plate of fried rice and poured it right on Maria's face. She also spilled the steaming coffee on the table all over her. Maria screamed in pain, holding her face as the hot food burned her skin. She never expected such wickedness. Tonia didn't allow her to say sorry. She didn't even give her a chance to talk. Instead, she picked up the empty plates, dropped them in the sink, and walked straight to Maria's room. Maria followed her, crying and begging, but Tonia didn't listen. She entered the room, packed all Maria's clothes into a bag, carried it outside, and threw it on the front pavement. "You are fired!" Tonia shouted. "Leave now. I don't care where you go." Maria fell on her knees, pleading, "Please, Ma. I have nowhere to go. Please just let me stay till morning." But Tonia slammed the door in her face and walked back inside the mansion. Maria was left outside with her bag, her face burning from the hot rice. She stood there shaking, confused, and in pain. She had no family to run to. She was raised by a stranger who took her in as a baby, and she had never known her real parents. Now she was homeless, hurt, and alone, thrown out without even informing her boss, Ken. A week later, Ken finally returned from his business trip. He expected to come home to his usual lively mansion, but something felt wrong the moment he stepped in. The house was too quiet. No one came to greet him. No footsteps. No voices. Not even the gate man opened the gate for him. Ken had to do it himself. When he walked inside, the living room was empty. The kitchen was cold. The whole place felt abandoned. He started calling out, "Maria! Maria!" But the maid he trusted so much was nowhere to be found. His worry grew quickly. Maria never left the house without permission. And even if she did, she would have told someone. Ken searched every corner of the mansion, but she had completely disappeared. He immediately took out his phone and called Tonia. The moment she picked up, Ken didn't waste time. "Tonia, stop whatever you are doing and come home now," he said in a firm, angry voice. As he entered his bedroom to change his clothes, his eyes fell on a small folded note beside his bed. He picked it up. It was Maria's handwriting. The note said, "Sir, please do not marry Madame Tonia. She is heartless. She sacked me just because I made a small mistake in the kitchen. She poured a hot plate of rice on my face. Please be careful, sir." Ken's hands shook as he read the note. He felt a deep anger rising inside him. His heart pounded hard. Tonia had gone too far again. By the time Tonia arrived at the mansion, Ken could not hold back his rage. He rushed outside as soon as he heard her car. "Where are my workers? Who gave you the right to sack them?" Ken shouted, his voice shaking with anger. Tonia froze. She opened her mouth to talk, but no words came out. She started stammering, trying to form a lie, but Ken already knew how wicked and cruel she could be. He didn't want to hear any excuses. Without another word, Ken rushed back inside, grabbed his car keys, and drove off in anger. He went down the streets, searching everywhere for Maria. He asked people, stopped at shops, checked the corners of the neighborhood. But Maria was nowhere to be found. She had vanished completely. Ken returned home late that night, his heart still burning with anger. Tonia followed him around the living room, trying to act sweet, touching his shoulder gently. "Baby, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." But Ken didn't even look at her. He walked past her again and again, refusing to listen. His mind was on Maria. Her note. Her pain. Her absence. Meanwhile, far away on the street, Maria had found a small corner to sit and rest. That was where she met another homeless girl. Her name was Ivy. She looked hungry, tired, and lost, just like Maria. They started talking. Maria told Ivy everything that happened in the mansion, how she was treated, how the hot rice burned her face, and how Tonia threw her out like trash. Ivy listened carefully. When Maria finished talking, Ivy sighed. "That woman is wicked," Ivy said. "She deserves to taste her own medicine." A bold idea entered Maria's mind. She leaned close to Ivy. "Ivy, please help me," she whispered. "Try to work in that house. If you go in there, maybe, just maybe, I can stand a chance to get justice. Through you, I can get back at Tonia for everything she did." Ivy agreed without thinking twice. Early the next morning, Maria gave Ivy the address to Ken's mansion. When Ivy arrived, Tonia had already left for work. Only Ken was at home. He heard the bell ring and walked to the door. The moment he opened it, he saw Ivy looking neat, beautiful, confident, and smart. She gave him a warm smile. "Good morning, sir," she said politely. "I am looking for a job. I can scrub floors, clean the whole house, and I can cook very well." Ken looked at her from head to toe. He needed someone urgently, someone who could take care of the kitchen, the house, and help him keep things in order while he sorted out the problem with Tonia. Without thinking too much, Ken said, "You're hired." And just like that, Ivy stepped into the house. But she didn't come for only work. She came for revenge. That evening, when Tonia returned from work, she walked into the kitchen and froze. Ivy was cleaning the counter, humming softly as if she owned the place. Tonia's face changed instantly. She marched toward Ivy. "Who are you?" she asked sharply. "And what are you doing in my kitchen?" Ivy slowly turned, not afraid at all. "Point of correction," she replied calmly. "This is not your kitchen. And watch how you talk to me. I am not working for you." Tonia's mouth fell open in shock. Nobody had ever spoken to her like that. Immediately, she stretched her hand to slap Ivy. But Ivy was faster. She grabbed Tonia's hand in the air and squeezed it. "Don't you ever try that in your entire life again," Ivy warned. Tonia's eyes widened. At that moment, she realized something she never expected. She had finally met her match. Embarrassed and shaking with anger, she rushed upstairs to report to Ken. She entered the room and began shouting, ranting, and complaining. "That girl is rude. Ken, sack her now. I don't like her. She disrespected me." But Ken didn't say a single word. He just stared at her quietly. Tonia kept talking, begging, pushing Ken to sack Ivy immediately. In her mind, she still believed Ivy was someone she could bully easily. But Ivy was strong, and she came fully prepared for Tonia. Finally, Ken stood up. "If you want me to sack Ivy," he said slowly, "then get me Maria first." Tonia's face changed. Those words hit her like thunder. She knew she had chased Maria away without permission. She didn't know where the girl went. She had no idea how to bring her back. It was a tough situation, one she could not escape. With anger and shame burning inside her, Tonia stormed into her room and slammed the door. Meanwhile, Ken still had not forgiven her, not even a little, for throwing Maria out and nearly hurting her for life. The next morning was a weekend. Ken needed to rush to his office to pick up some important files. Ivy stayed behind, cleaning the kitchen as usual. She worked quietly, arranging plates and wiping the counters. Tonia, still angry from the previous day, came straight into the kitchen. She wanted to frustrate Ivy. She stood behind her, making rude comments, knocking spoons on the counter, and breathing down her neck. But Ivy pretended not to see her. She continued cleaning like nothing was happening. Tonia became more annoyed. She wanted to provoke Ivy. Suddenly, in her anger, she picked up a strong turning stick from the drawer and hit Ivy on the back of her head. The pain was sharp and deep. Ivy touched her head and saw blood rushing down her face. Her heart shook with anger. Before she could think twice, she grabbed a breakable plate from the sink. Just as Tonia turned to walk away with pride, Ivy raised the plate and smashed it on Tonia's head. Boom! Tonia screamed and collapsed on the floor. The blow was stronger than Ivy expected. Tonia rolled on the ground crying in pain, holding her head as blood also began to drip. Ivy simply stood there, breathing hard, ignoring her. Not long after, Ken drove into the compound. The moment he entered the house, he found Tonia lying on the floor with blood on her forehead. Shocked, he rushed to her, lifted her, and carried her to the car. Without wasting a second, he drove her straight to the hospital. That same day, after Ken left, Ivy quickly called Maria. "Maria, come to the house now." "I found something," she said urgently. Maria rushed down immediately. When she arrived, Ivy took her upstairs to Tonia's room. Maria had always suspected Tonia of something dark, but she never had proof. They both searched quietly. Just beside a travel bag under the bed, Maria noticed something strange. A small Ecolag bag. She opened it carefully. Inside, she found a gun, a bottle of poison, an envelope. Her hands shook as she opened the envelope. Inside it was a picture of Ken. On the back of the picture were the words, "If the poison doesn't work, use the gun and finish him." Maria dropped the letter with fear. Now she understood everything clearly. This was why Tonia hated maids. This was why she didn't want anyone near Ken. The maids were the only ones who could expose her. They were blocking her plan to kill Ken. The next morning was a weekend. Ken needed to rush to his office to pick up some important files. Ivy stayed behind, cleaning the kitchen as usual. She worked quietly, arranging plates and wiping the counters. Tonia, still angry from the previous day, came straight into the kitchen. She wanted to frustrate Ivy. She stood behind her, making rude comments, knocking spoons on the counter, and breathing down her neck. But Ivy pretended not to see her. She continued cleaning like nothing was happening. Tonia became more annoyed. She wanted to provoke Ivy. Suddenly, in her anger, she picked up a strong turning stick from the drawer and hit Ivy on the back of her head. The pain was sharp and deep. Ivy touched her head and saw blood rushing down her face. Her heart shook with anger. Before she could think twice, she grabbed a breakable plate from the sink. Just as Tonia turned to walk away with pride, Ivy raised the plate and smashed it on Tonia's head. Boom! Tonia screamed and collapsed on the floor. The blow was stronger than Ivy expected. Tonia rolled on the ground crying in pain, holding her head as blood also began to drip. Ivy simply stood there, breathing hard, ignoring her. Not long after, Ken drove into the compound. The moment he entered the house, he found Tonia lying on the floor with blood on her forehead. Shocked, he rushed to her, lifted her, and carried her to the car. Without wasting a second, he drove her straight to the hospital. That same day, after Ken left, Ivy quickly called Maria. "Maria, come to the house now." "I found something," she said urgently. Maria rushed down immediately. When she arrived, Ivy took her upstairs to Tonia's room. Maria had always suspected Tonia of something dark, but she never had proof. They both searched quietly. Just beside a travel bag under the bed, Maria noticed something strange. A small Ecolag bag. She opened it carefully. Inside, she found a gun, a bottle of poison, An envelope. Her hands shook as she opened the envelope. Inside it was a picture of Ken. On the back of the picture were the words, "If the poison doesn't work, use the gun and finish him." Maria dropped the letter with fear. Now she understood everything clearly. This was why Tonia hated maids. This was why she didn't want anyone near Ken. The maids were the only ones who could expose her. They were blocking her plan to kill Ken. Why would she want to kill Ken? That same day, Ken returned from the hospital with Tonia. As they stepped into the mansion, they met Maria standing in the living room. The moment Ken saw her, his face lit up with joy. "Maria! Thank God you're safe," he said, rushing to her. But Tonia's reaction was different. Her face squeezed in fear and anger. She didn't expect Maria to ever return. She forced a fake smile, but it didn't hide the shock in her eyes. Maria and Ivy greeted Ken politely and quickly went into the kitchen to prepare something for him and Tonia to eat. Tonia went straight to her room to rest, still holding her bandaged head. A few minutes later, Maria quietly walked back into the living room and approached Ken. "Sir, please," she said gently, "I need to tell you something very important." Ken thought she wanted to talk about her unpaid salary. So he smiled and said, "Don't worry, Maria. I will double your salary. You have been loyal." But Maria shook her head. "It's not about salary, sir." She took a deep breath. "Sir, Tonia wants to kill you." Ken's face immediately hardened. Maria continued, her voice shaking. "She doesn't love you. She is with you for her own plans. Today Ivy and I checked her room, Anne." "Enough." Ken cut her off sharply. He stood up, angry. "Maria, don't say such things about my fiancé. Tonia can be rude, yes. She can be harsh. But she would never try to take my life." Maria's heart sank. She tried again. "Sir, please believe me. I saw the gun, Anne." Ken raised his hand to silence her. "I said that's enough. Do not accuse Tonia like that again. She may have her faults, but she is not a murderer." Tears rushed into Maria's eyes. She felt so disappointed, so helpless. She had proof, yet Ken refused to believe her because of love. Slowly, she walked back to the kitchen. When she entered, Ivy immediately noticed her sad face. "What happened?" Ivy asked. Maria explained everything, how Ken didn't believe her, how he defended Tonia, and how he warned her to stop talking. Ivy listened quietly. Then she sighed. "Maria, we cannot let Ken stay blind. If we leave things like this, Tonia will kill him." Maria nodded sadly. "So what do we do?" she asked. A cold smile slowly formed on Ivy's lips. "I have a plan," she whispered. "A plan that will change everything." Maria looked at her with fear and hope mixed together. Whatever Ivy was planning, it was big. And it was going to expose Tonia complete. Ivy and Maria knew they could not waste any more time. Ken's life was in danger. They decided to involve the police immediately. While Tonia was in her room resting, and Ken was in the bathroom freshening up, Maria quietly left the house. Her heart was beating fast as she rushed to the nearest police station. At the station, Maria explained everything: the cruelty, the gun, the poison, the letter, and how Tonia planned to kill her boss. The police listened carefully. Seeing the seriousness of the case, 2 policemen followed Maria back to the mansion. When they arrived, Tonia was already in the living room. She was sitting on Ken's lap, watching television and acting lovingly, as if nothing was wrong. The moment Tonia saw the policeman, she jumped up in shock. Ken also stood up, confused. He thought the police had come because of how badly Tonia treated the workers when he was away. But Maria had a different mission. "Officer," Maria said boldly, "please arrest this woman for attempted murder." Tonia exploded in anger. "Are you mad?" she shouted. "Who gave you the audacity to call the police on me, you foolish girl? She kept shouting and insulting Maria. Maria stayed calm. She turned to the policeman and said, "Please follow me to her room. I will show you everything." They all went upstairs. Tonia was still shouting, but her voice began to shake. Inside the room, Maria pointed to the bag. "That is it," she said. One of the policemen picked up the bag and turned to Tonia. "Madam, open it," he ordered. At that moment, Tonia knew it was the end of the road. The policeman opened the bag and brought out the items one by one: a gun, a letter, and a picture of Ken. Ken felt weak. His legs almost gave way. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The letter clearly explained everything. One of Ken's colleagues at work had hired Tonia over 6 months ago. She was paid a huge amount of money to get close to Ken, gain his trust, and eventually kill him. Tonia had never loved Ken. She was only there to destroy him. Tonia broke down and started crying, but it was too late. The policeman handcuffed her and led her away. Ken stood there in shock, his heart broken. Suddenly, he turned to Maria. He walked up to her and hugged her tightly. "You saved my life," he said with tears in his eyes. Right there, Ken increased Maria's salary greatly and promised never to doubt her again. He also thanked Ivy for her courage and loyalty. As for Tonia, she was taken away to face the law for attempted murder. And that was the day the truth finally came out.